Hello my dear students and welcome back to the lesson Measurement and Effects of Heat. Today let us proceed with the next part of the lesson, that is thermometer. So you must have seen if someone has fallen ill and has got temperature, has got fever, then the first thing is to measure the temperature of the body with the help of a thermometer. So, a thermometer is a device which measures the temperature. If it is the body temperature, then it is a different type of a thermometer. And if it is no room temperature or water temperature, we use another type of thermometer. So, first of all, remember the word thermo and meter. Thermo means related to temperature and meter means measurement, and that is why a thermometer is used to measure the temperature. Remember this, right? So there are various types of thermometers. Like here you can see a thermometer which can measure minimum as well as maximum temperature of the day. Then there is a clinical thermometer. Then we have a laboratory thermometer. Then this is also a clinical thermometer but which is a digital type. Then we have another type of maximum and minimum type of temperature within a day. We'll discuss about it. Then you might have seen nowadays that all the people, the temperature of everyone is checked with the help of this. Even when you're coming to school, you have seen that the teachers are using this type of thermometer to check the temperature. Okay, so this type of thermometer is also called as infrared thermometer. Fine. So now let's discuss about the working of a thermometer. How is the thermometer? Now if you see here, this thermometer is made up of two glass tubes. There is one outside which is a larger glass tube and inside which is a very narrow tube. So here you can see somewhat narrow tube which is there inside the thermometer. Fine. Okay, and this narrow tube ends in a bulb. Okay, it ends in a bulb, and that bulb as well as the part of the thermometer is filled with a liquid. That part of the thermometer is nothing but the narrow tube which is there inside the inside the bigger glass tube. So this narrow tube is filled with a liquid. Earlier, mercury was used, whereas nowadays alcohol is used, or mercury has been replaced by alcohol. So, since mercury is very toxic in nature, because suppose if the glass thermometer falls down and breaks, then what will happen? The mercury will spill everywhere. And suppose if anybody touches by mistake, okay, then it is very toxic, and if someone puts his or hand in the mouth, then it can be very lethal. Therefore, to avoid such accidents, instead of mercury, nowadays alcohol is used. Alcohol also has the property similar to that of the mercury. Fine. Now, and the rest of the volume of the tube, that means the outer tube which is there, is filled with the vacuum. And then the above part of the thermometer is closed. Above end of the thermometer is closed so that the liquid after expanding does not come out of it. Right. So you have understood how is the construction of the thermometer. So it has two glass tubes. Okay. One is narrow, which is filled with the liquid and which ends in the bulb. Fine. Then instead of mercury nowadays, alcohol is used. The outer part of the thermometer is filled with the vacuum, and the above end is the other end of the of the thermometer is closed. Fine. So this is regarding the thermometer. Okay, so which is mostly laboratory thermometer is designed in this manner. Fine. Now, when we have to measure the temperature of anything, the bulb is kept in contact with the object whose temperature is to be measured. Now, how we can measure the temperature? There is a bulb, as I mentioned to you, at one of the end. That bulb should be immersed or inserted into the object whoever's temperature we have to check. It may be any object or even the body temperature. When we are checking, we have to bring in the bulb in contact with the either the patient if it is for fever, and if we are using in the laboratory, then whichever object we are using, it has to be immersed in that so that we can measure the temperature. Now what happens, it now how is the thermometer working? It is working on expansion of substances. You have learned that when any object is heated, it expands. Correct? When any object is heated, it expands. Whereas when its temperature becomes lesser and lesser, it goes on contracting. So it is based on same principle here. When the thermometer is placed in the hot object, what will happen? The mercury or the alcohol which is there inside the thermometer will start expanding, and when it goes on expanding, what happens is that it will stop wherever is the temperature of the whatever is the temperature of the object. So because of the increased temperature, the alcohol inside or the mercury inside it expands, and its level in the tube rises. Okay, its level in the tube will rise, and somewhere it will stop. Whatever is the temperature of the substance, it will stop at that level, and that level means the temperature of that particular substance. Is that clear? Uh, so using the properties of the expansion, okay, these are called as the properties of expansion of alcohol. Now I'm going to use alcohol only because nowadays alcohol is used. Fine. So using the properties of the expansion of alcohol from the temperatures can be obtained from the level of the alcohol, as I mentioned to you. Whatever may be the level, it has stopped or it has risen up. So that level gives you the temperature reading. So the tube of the thermometer is marked accordingly. Okay, fine. So this is how we are measuring the temperature with the help of a thermometer. Now let us move on to the next part of the lesson. So you might have seen this type of thermometer. Maybe in your house also you might have seen this type of thermometer. So this is nothing but a clinical thermometer. Remember, this is called as a clinical thermometer. Earlier which I have shown you, this one was a laboratory thermometer which is used in the laboratory. Fine. A clinical thermometer is used to measure the temperature of the body or body temperature. Okay. Now you know you might be knowing about the body temperature of human beings. So normally the body temperature of human beings is 37 degree Celsius. Okay, so you can see over here also in this there is a mark of 37 degree Celsius. Okay, 37 is shown in the red color. Okay, so which means it is the normal body temperature of any human being. Fine. So therefore it is designed in such a way that it is showing the measurement or the temperature between 35 degrees Celsius to 42 degree Celsius. So this much is the range of the clinical thermometer, because our body temperature is 37. So it might go sometimes less or it might go above 38 up to 38 degrees Celsius, because it is 38 means around 101 degree Fahrenheit. So you have learned about the Fahrenheit scale also now. So mostly when we are saying our body temperature is we have got fever, then we use this clinical thermometer to measure the temperature. And then we say record the temperature around 99, then 100, we say, right, 102 and all. So here you can see around 38 degree 38 degree is nothing but around okay, I cannot expand. Fine. 37 degrees Celsius, you can see that it is 98.6 Fahrenheit, and above that, okay, when it goes on increasing, when it reaches 99, that means you have a fever. Fine. When it is 98.6, it is the normal body temperature. When it goes higher, around 99 or 100, when it goes, that is in terms of Fahrenheit I am talking about, not the centigrade or the Celsius. If it is 100 degrees Celsius, that means it will be called as a boiling temperature, and our body does not boil. Understood? So 100, when we say, it is in terms of Fahrenheit. Okay, so 37 degrees Celsius corresponds to 98.6 Fahrenheit, and then above 98.6, that means even when it is 99, we say we have got a fever. Okay, 100 degree Fahrenheit also fever. 102 is very high, we say, right? So 102 is around 39 degree Celsius. Okay, so this is regarding the clinical thermometer. So remember, the range of the clinical thermometer is between 35 degrees Celsius to 42 degrees Celsius, and normal body temperature of a healthy person is 37 degrees Celsius, which corresponds to around 98.6 degree Fahrenheit. Okay, that you have to remember. Fine. So now let's proceed a little further. Okay, so nowadays, instead of clinical thermometer, which is made up of glass, we use a digital thermometer. Okay, so this digital thermometer does not have any liquid expanding inside it. Instead, it is having sensors. Okay, so this does not use the property of expansion of the liquids due to heat. Instead, it is having a sensor which can measure the heat coming out from the body. Okay, so it is measuring the heat coming out from the body due to, there is a sensor fitted in that. So that sensor measures the heat coming out from the body directly, and from that can measure the temperature of the body. So this is regarding the digital thermometer, which directly shows you the number. No need to see like this inside how much the mercury has rose or risen up. Okay, here it directly gives you in exact number. Okay, since it is a digital type of thermometer, so it gives digital numbers. Fine. Now let's proceed. Then we also have the thermometer in the laboratory. So this is a thermometer from the laboratory. Now what is the difference between the clinical thermometer and laboratory thermometer? A clinical thermometer can measure only from 35 degree to 42 degrees Celsius, whereas this can measure even 0 to 110, or even below 0 degree Celsius also, that is 10 to 20 degree less, that is minus 10, minus 20 degree Celsius also it can measure. Okay, and from 0 to 110 degrees Celsius, and even above that also it can measure. Fine. So this is a laboratory thermometer, which mostly uses the unit called as degree Celsius, not in Fahrenheit. So Fahrenheit we are using in the case of clinical thermometer, whereas laboratory thermometer we mostly say degree Celsius, right? And it can measure up to 110 degrees Celsius, even more than that. Okay, so laboratory thermometer can measure up to 110 degrees Celsius or even larger. A special type of thermometer is used to measure maximum and minimum temperature in a day, and it is also called as maximum and minimum thermometer. So this is that maximum or minimum thermometer, wherein you are getting in the in the case of a newspaper, you might have seen what is the maximum temperature and minimum temperature. Like for example, during the summer season, the maximum temperature can go, especially in the tropical climate, or maybe in Maharashtra, up to 35 degrees Celsius, and the minimum might be 28, 27 degrees Celsius. So the thermometer which records about the minimum as well as maximum temperature within a day is also called as maximum and minimum thermometer. Nowadays, even in the mobile also you are getting the range, what will be the minimum temperature, that means the colder temperature, and what will be the highest maximum temperature within a day. That thermometer, that type of thermometer is called as maximum and minimum thermometer. So remember this. Now this is regarding the thermometers. Fine. So now let's see, when a hot object is immersed in a cold object, what can happen. So you have learned last time also that when a hot object is placed in a cold object, what happens is that the hot object goes on giving away heat. Okay, the hot object loses its heat. Okay, whereas the cold object absorbs heat, and therefore what happens, the temperature of the hot object goes on decreasing. Okay, when there is an exchange of the heat taking place, here there is exchange of heat taking place, that I mentioned to you before also, that whenever any hot object is placed in a cold object, there will be exchange of heat taking place. Hot object becomes, goes on decreasing in its temperature, whereas the cold object, since it absorbs the heat, it goes on, the temperature goes on increasing. Fine. Now the and you know that the temperature is related to the kinetic energy. So the hot object always has higher kinetic energy. The atoms of the hot object has more kinetic energy, whereas the atoms of the colder object has less kinetic energy, right? So what happens is that when the hot object loses its heat, then the kinetic energy of these what is that, these atoms goes on decreasing, whereas in the case of cold object, since it is absorbing heat, the kinetic energy of the atoms, which was earlier less, goes on increasing. Fine. To some extent, that average kinetic energies of the atoms in both of them becomes equal at one point. Fine. And you have learned that the temperature is related to the average kinetic energy. Fine. So average kinetic energy of atoms of both the objects, that is hot object and cold object, at one point they become equal, and when they become equal, that means even their temperatures become equal. Okay, remember this. So this is regarding what we have learned about now the temperature and the thermometer. And now last, we have also learned about one principle. Okay, this principle also called as principle of heat exchange, which you are going to learn in detail in standard 10th. But here you have understood now that whenever any hot object is kept in a cold object, okay, you will find that the hot object loses its heat, whereas the cold object absorbs heat. The temperature of the hot object goes on decreasing, temperature of the cold object goes on increasing. Okay, so the kinetic energy of the hot object reduces and kinetic energy of the cold object increases. At one point, the kinetic energies of both of them become equal, and that is called as the average kinetic energy. So when average kinetic energy becomes equal, the temperature also becomes equal. So that you have to remember. Okay, so based on this only, next part of the lesson is there, that is specific heat. So till we will be learning about specific heat in the next video. Till then students, bye and thank you.